What players are or should give the LA Kings the most bang for their buck? We are grading the LA Kings' current contracts. That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of the Puck Podcast, a weekly podcast that recaps the week in the NHL. Now in its 20th year of existence, we are one of the longest running hockey podcasts out there. And I'm also a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Well, during the off season, there are no games and the news is sometimes a little bit slow coming out. And sometimes we have to find things to talk about. It can be a challenge, but most of the time it's a fun one. And I did see an article from Dom Lucian from The Athletic, someone we have used someone as a topic of conversation before, and he has provided me with some inspiration for today's topic as well. He did an article where he gave each player on every team a grade based on a variety of factors, but mostly around their contracts. He then ranked all 32 NHL teams to see which teams were spending their money the most efficiently or wisely. Now, I'm sure he did a ton of research in this, probably used a lot of different criteria, used different analytics. I'm not going to go that deep into it for my purposes, for our purposes. And look, I highly encourage you to check out his article if you can and judge for yourself what you think on what he decided to do. But for my purposes, for our purposes, I'm making this a little bit simpler, as simple at least as I can be. I know there are a variety of you that watch this show, different levels of hockey fandom. Some of you are really, really into analytics, really into the salary cap and all the workings of that. Some of you you're just kind of on the periphery of that, but might be a little bit interested to get kind of a basic rundown of, what the LA Kings are paying each player and how that kind of fits in as far as good contracts, bad contracts, that kind of thing. So again, that article did give me some inspiration to look at the Kings roster, look at the contracts for next season, and do my own grading. Now, this is based on what each player is getting paid for next season and pretty much what they've done to this point as members of the LA Kings. I will include some thoughts on how these contracts could look going in the near future. I'll also say, very generally speaking, there is a typical amount that a GM should pay a player in a certain role. Again, this is really keeping it on a basic level, but you look at your top line forwards, those guys should typically make around $7 to $11 million a year. Now, the elite guys will make a little bit more than that. The top of the top guys, for example, Leon Draisaitl is making $14 million per year. Right now, he is currently the highest paid player in the NHL, could be passed by Connor McDavid here in the near future. So your second line players typically will make between $6, $7, $8 million. Third line players, $3, $4, $5 million. And then, of course, your fourth line players are around $1, maybe $2 million at the most. Same thing for top pairing defensemen. You could make $7 to $10 million typically. Erik Karlsson of the Penguins, actually the highest paid defenseman per season. He's making $11.5 million per year, and not many people think he's the best defenseman in the NHL, but that's not a great contract. That's for another show. Second pairing defenseman, usually $4, $5, $6 million a year. Third pairing defenseman, maybe $1, $2 million a year. Top ranked goalies, number one goalies, $7 to $10 million typically. Right now, Igor Shesterkin of the Rangers is your highest paid goalie. He's making $11.5 million per season. So for your top level guys, they can make a little bit more than the average. You're looking at, for second level goalies, for number two goalies, your backup goalies, probably $1 or $2 million. Generally speaking, again, very, very basic kind of a guideline when you're looking at contracts if you don't follow this thing very closely. So let's start off with the LA Kings and give out who I think, based on their current contract, gets an A grade. Now, these grades are more from a team standpoint than a player standpoint. And it's likely you might not want to be getting an A grade necessarily because it means that your value is really good for the team. But I think you would start off with Adrian Kempe absolutely getting an A as far as his value with the contract for the team. Now, again, that might not last too much longer depending on what he gets for his next contract. Not saying that it would be an overpayment, but for now, this season, Adrian Kempe is making $5.5 million per season. You look at other top line players, you look at other teams' players who, like Kempe, were in the lead as far as points go, 73 last year for Kempe, tied for the team lead or close to the team lead in goals scored, 35 for Kempe last year. Those guys typically are not making around 5 million, 6 million per year. They're making more than that typically. And Kempe will make more than that. But at the moment, right now, for a guy who's putting up numbers, for a guy who's playing on the top line, for a guy who brings leadership, a good, reliable two-way player, any way you slice it, that's an A contract for the LA Kings for what they're paying Adrian Kempe. Now, again, multi-year extension, we hope, is on the horizon for Adrian Kempe with the LA Kings. And we'll talk about what that contract looks like once he does, hopefully, in fact, sign it. But to me, there is no question when you're looking for a great bargain. Right now, Adrian Kempe for next season is definitely an A contract for the LA Kings. I would have to say, based on his only season with the Kings, how could you not give goalie Darcy Kemper an A? Now, he's making $5.3 million per season. Now, for a guy who was battling to be a number one goalie last year, who had lost his starting job in Washington, you're like, ooh, that might be not the greatest contract in the world. But when you're a Vezina Trophy finalist and you're top 3 in save percentage and goals against average, $5.3 million per season is a very, very good contract for that level of a goaltender. So Darcy Kemper, that's an A contract for the LA Kings. And you look at the other finalists for the Vezina, Connor Hellebuck, who won it, is making $8.5 million per season. Andrei Vasilevsky is making $9.5 million. So when you compare that obviously to Darcy Kemper at $5.3 million, that's a great contract. That's an A contract for the Kings. Now, there is concern with Kemper. He's 35. He's still under contract for 2 more years. I've gone on record as saying I'd be really surprised if he puts up another Vezina caliber season. I still think, he could be a top 10 goalie in the league, especially with the Kings defense around him. So $5.3 million for a top 10 goalie, that's still very solid. I'd still give that an A. Now, maybe in year 3 of this contract, maybe it's something else, but I think right now that's an A contract, Darcy Kemper and the Kings. I think Brandt Clarke, you have to give an A to, especially if he's going to be a second pairing defenseman, if he's going to be running your second power play unit. He's on an entry-level deal, and you can't pay those guys more than $1 million. So you don't really give the Kings any credit for negotiating a great contract. He's getting what he's supposed to get. But again, it's still a great contract for him. And again, if the worst case scenario happens, he turns out to be a third pairing defenseman, I still think that's a pretty good contract. I would say more of a B contract maybe, but I'd say Brandt Clarke right now is an A for paying that kind of a guy less than $1 million. I'm going to give Anze Kopitar a B. I still think he means a lot to the LA Kings, and he might not be a typical number 1 line center these days, but based on his all-around play, what he's done for the organization, I really don't have much of a problem with him making $7 million per year. He was second on the team in points, first in assists last season. So yeah, maybe it's a little on the high side in some respects, but I'm fine with it. I think that's a B contract for the LA Kings. I think Quentin Byfield gets a B, but I think it has a good chance of being an A contract, hopefully in the near future. Now, Byfield's making $6.3 million per season for the next 4 years. I think you could say, just based on his numbers to this point, maybe right now in the moment, it might be a little bit of an overpay, but we're also, when you sign these guys to these contracts, it's not just about what they've done so far. It's also potential and growth and what you think they're going to do. And I think that contract could be, we hope it will be, an underpayment, maybe in the not too distant future if Byfield continues to progress and turn into a really, really special player. That contract will look a lot better as we get into the 3rd and 4th year, hopefully, of his deal. All right, we're just getting started here, giving out grades to the LA Kings players based on their contract and their production. That's next. We're going to continue with it here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. You just realized your business needs to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast, easy? Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored job posts put your post at the top of the page to help you reach your candidates faster. If you've been in a spot where you need to hire right away, the pressure's on, and every day without the right person's a setback, that's exactly when Indeed's sponsored job posts come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. And now you can speed up the hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. We continue to give out grades for the LA Kings contracts for this coming season. We gave a couple of Bs out a moment ago, and I think forward Alex Laferriere's new deal is a solid B for the LA Kings, assuming that he continues to progress and his numbers go up next season. That contract could turn into an A contract, but Laferriere just getting ready to turn 24. He's kind of an older young player, if that makes sense, but $4.1 million per season for the next 3 years. I think that contract should age very well as he continues to progress, hopefully. I do expect him next season to set career highs in goals and points, especially playing on that second line with Quentin Byfield and Kevin Fiala. So that Alex Laferriere contract, I'd give it a solid B. Could be an A, though, down the road. We hope. Forward Andrei Kuzmenko, a little bit tough to grade. Now, he signed a 1-year deal worth $4.1 million for a top-line player, or at the very least, a top 6 forward. That's very reasonable. So you would say, why would that not be an A grade? But we're kind of waiting to see what Andrei Kuzmenko we're going to get. Is it going to be the Kuzmenko who was a King last year in 22 regular season games, 17 points, 5 goals, 12 assists? Based on that, then yeah, that's a pretty reasonable contract. But overall last year, 66 games with 3 teams, he had a total of 11 goals and 37 points. That doesn't look like a top line player. Now the Kings are, when they signed into this contract, they're both kind of banking on what Kuzmenko is going to be and what he can do after this deal. But I would say if he's what we saw with the Kings, this could be an A contract. If he's more of what we saw in Philadelphia and Calgary, might be kind of a C contract. So we'll play it safe and we'll give it a B. I think Mikey Anderson has a B contract, and you could argue based on his all-around game, is he truly a top pairing defenseman? I think he's a very, very strong defensive defenseman. I don't think he's any worse than somebody who should be on your second pairing. $4.1 million per year, very reasonable. $4.1 million for the next 6 years as the salary cap continues to go up is really good. I think Mikey has already played 345 NHL games, and he's 26 years old. He seems like he's been around a little bit more than that, but certainly a young veteran. You would probably call Mikey Anderson, and I think he should age very well into that contract. Right now, it's a solid contract. I'd give it a B, but who knows, maybe even an A contract at some point. I think veteran Corey Perry gets a B from me for his $2 million 1-year deal. Now, he is a fourth-line player, and that's kind of at the top of what you're going to pay most fourth-line players, generally speaking. But when you consider what kind of playoff performer he is, when you consider how much he excels at doing those dirty things, not necessarily illegal, but you know what I mean, going to the net, stirring it up. He's done it all of his career. And yeah, he's 40 years old, but I think the $2 million per season for what he can bring to the LA Kings, I think that's fine. I think that's a B contract. Warren Fogle, big fan of his. I think he's got a B contract. 2 years, $3.5 million per season for a third line forward. It's fine. But just all the things he brings to the table, to me, kind of plays bigger than a third line player, at least from what we've seen from him so far. Hopefully that continues. I think Warren Fogle gets a B contract. Now moving into the C's. I'm going to go with a C grade for forward Joel Armia, one of the newcomers to the Kings. Fourth line player at $2.5 million, a little bit on the high side, but when you consider what he can bring to the table, kind of like Corey Perry, just turned 32, so he's not old. I think he's definitely got plenty in the tank. Would have probably preferred maybe a 1-year deal. 2 years, though, isn't terrible for Joel Armia. I do think he upgrades the Kings as far as being more, more depth for the team and a good experience. He's a playoff performer, not quite the level of Corey Perry, but 2.5, I'm okay with it. Glad it's not more than a 2-year deal, but I'll give that contract a C. And same goes for another newcomer, and that's defenseman Brian Dumoulin. Give him a C as well. I think if he's a second pairing defenseman making $4 million per year, that's perfectly fine for me. If he's a third pairing defenseman, then I think that's too much. And if you're looking at the contract in its totality, 3-year deal, I would have been a lot happier if that was a 2-year deal instead. But again, if he's the second pairing guy, he's 33 years old, $4 million a year for a second pairing guy is fine. So I would give that a C. Now, if it turns out he's on the third pairing making $4 million a year, then that I don't know. That grade might change for me. I'm still giving Drew Doughty a C, although I think he's still that contract it's a lot. Look, I mean, $11 million a year for Drew Doughty. Take into consideration what he's meant to the organization, greatest defenseman in franchise history. I'm willing to bend a bit when it comes to a player like that and give him kind of the benefit of the doubt. Is he still a top pairing defenseman? Well, on the Kings, he is. If you want to go right shot on the right side, I mean, who else is it going to be at this point? That having been said, while I get him still being on the top pairing, I don't think Brant Clark's ready for that, obviously, at this point, and certainly wouldn't want to see Cody Ceci up there. I do think it's reasonable, though, to not have Drew Doughty be a guy who's playing 24, 25 minutes a night. Again, I understand he's on the LA Kings. Is he a top pairing guy? Yeah, on the Kings he is. But doesn't mean he has to play that many minutes. So $11 million per year, obviously, that's what you want to pay to a top pairing guy who's still, close to an elite level. And Drew's not that anymore. He can still play. I still think he's an asset, but if you're looking just at the contract, I can certainly see an argument for giving that a D. But I just for all he's done, I can't bring myself to giving him anything lower than a C. So Kevin Fiala, I think, gets a C, but I think it has the potential to be more of a B contract. Now, $7.9 million on the surface for a player who tied with the team leading goals, 35, seems like a fair deal, but his point production really slipped last year. He should be putting up a lot more than just 25 assists and more than 60 points. Now, if the points stay the same, then I say, and the goaltending, goal scoring obviously is very important, but when you're paying that much, you want an all-around game and all-around production from a player like that, not just a goal scorer, even though that's very important. But if Fiala gets back to the mid-70s for points or even high 70s for points, I think that contract's a B contract. I'm optimistic that he can get there. But for right now, based on what he did last year, I would say that that's a C contract. I think Joel Edmondson, a defenseman, is a C contract. Now, if he's playing on the second pairing, which I hope he isn't, maybe you could argue it's a B contract. $3.9 million for a second pairing defenseman, generally speaking, is fine. The problem is I see him more as a third pairing guy. So $3.9 million for a third pairing defenseman is on the high side. He just turned 32. He's got 3 more years left on the deal. So the contract is not great. And it might not be any better. It probably isn't going to be any better going forward, but I'll still give Joel Edmondson a C for now, but that's maybe a C minus at this point. Up next, we're going to talk a little bit more. Is anyone barely getting a passing grade? I think there's one guy that you might know. That's next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, You can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Continuing giving out grades to the LA Kings players based on what they are making per year, where they're playing, and their production. And I'm going to give third line center Phillip Danault a C grade. $5.5 million per season for 2 more years. Does a lot of things that may not jump out at you when you check the numbers. Certainly a guy who provides a veteran leadership as well. So third line center, $5.5 million. It's a little on the high side, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay giving Phillip Danault a C grade. I think Trevor Moore gets a C. Could have been a solid B last season, but the production dropped off, unfortunately. This past season, he's making $4.2 million for the next 3 years. If the scoring gets back up to where we hope it would be, if he's scoring 20 to 25 goals, then that contract is absolutely fine. Matter of fact, it might even be a B contract. But if he is where he was last year, where he's scoring less than 20 goals, he had 18 a year ago, then you got to just say that's a B contract at this point. I'm predicting, though, Trevor Moore's going to get back in the 20 goal range this coming season, I hope. Alex Turcotte, I mean, there's not a lot to judge there. Give him a C grade for the contract. He's making just $775,000 a year, and he's signed for the next 2 years. Then he'll be a restricted free agent. But right now, he doesn't have a secured spot, certainly in the starting lineup. I think he's going to be in competition for that fourth line center position. If he wins it out, then that's great. But he also, I think his versatility might lend him to being kind of that first guy off the bench type of fill-in for any injuries. He can play wing, he can play center, probably a bottom line center position, third or fourth line center position. So I think Turcotte definitely is going to make the team. Whether he can be the fourth line center or not remains to be seen. That's one of the few camp battles the LA Kings are going to have. But I would say for Turcotte right now, for what he's contributing, I'd say his contract is a C. Same thing for Samuel Helenius, kind of the same boat. If he wins that fourth line center position and shows some growth, maybe it could be a B contract. Again, he's like Turcotte. He's making less than $1 million a year, $800,000 per season. He'll be a restricted free agent after this coming season. So Samuel Helenius, again, maybe he's a fourth line center. Maybe he's a first guy off the bench kind of a guy. Not as versatile though as Turcotte. So I just say going into training camp, I think Helenius kind of has the advantage, but we'll see. Akil Thomas, occasional fill-in. He gets a C. 1 year left on his contract at $775,000. I think it's very possible Akil gets put on waivers. And if he's not claimed by another team, which I don't think he would be, it's a real possibility that Akil Thomas could be sent down to the Ontario Reign. He's right now just battling to stay on a NHL roster spot. But I think, you look at Turcotte, you look at Helenius, I think one of those guys is definitely going to stay. One of those guys will be the fourth line center, and Akil Thomas could be the odd man out in that situation. Backup goalie Anton Forsberg, I'm giving a C2. He's probably the most difficult player to try and grade because I really have not watched him play much at all. Not really able to give you a good assessment. Obviously, I'm going to be learning a lot about him this season. I hope it's positive. I hope I like what I see. The numbers in Ottawa were okay. Should they be better with the LA Kings with a more veteran defensive style in front of him? You would think so, but going to have to see it to kind of figure it out. We talked about what you pay a number one goalie, a number two goalie. I would prefer it to be around $1 million. So 1.3 is okay. I'd also prefer it to be a 1 year deal, but 2 is not that bad. He's got a 2 year deal worth $1.3 million. So we'll see. We'll see if Anton Forsberg turns into a really solid number two goalie. I could give this contract more of a B grade. Then you've got a couple of guys who, again, are also fighting to be on the roster. Jacob Moverar, we'll give him a C, $750 or $775,000 in the final year of his contract. Kyle Burrows, he gets a C as well. 1 year left on his deal that pays him $1.1 million. Both those guys are going to be battling it out to see who's the Kings' extra defenseman. The other could be put on waivers and then sent to Ontario if they clear waivers. I would think Jacob Moverar probably has the upside on Alex Burrows, but we shall see how that goes. And there's one player I have not mentioned yet, and he's the only player who's not getting an A, B, or a C, and that is Cody Ceci. Probably not surprisingly, is getting a D. It's passing, but barely. And no third pairing defenseman, which I think is what he's going to be, should be making $4.5 million per season and should not get a 4-year deal, but that's what Cody Ceci got. It's not his fault. It's Ken Holland's fault for signing to that deal. Don't blame Cody Ceci for being smart enough to say, absolutely, I'll take that deal. He's going to turn 32. That's certainly not ancient, but you wouldn't call him young either. Hard to believe that Ceci's going to get better as he gets older, but I know some have suggested that he's getting paid like a second pairing defenseman, and that's where they think he's going to slot in. I understand that line of thinking. I hope that's not correct. I think if he's playing on the second pairing, you could justify his contract a bit, but I don't think he would be nearly as effective for the Kings as if he were on the third pairing. And more importantly, Brandt Clarke needs to be playing second pairing minutes for his development and to get better. He is a better option than Cody Ceci, in my opinion. So here is hoping that Cody Ceci is grossly overpaid as a third pairing defenseman this season. But again, for a third pairing defenseman, $4.5 million is too much, and 4 years is definitely way too much money. If it was a 2-year deal, I could kind of swallow it, thinking maybe Ken Holland has got that 2-year window to try and see if he can get this team to where they want to be. And then after that, you're going to have to start to make some big decisions and probably some changes. That could be the end of both Kopitar and Doughty at that point, but 4 years for Cody Ceci. So that's a bad contract, and no other grade but a D. And you wouldn't give him an F, because who gets an F grade, frankly? Because if you have an F grade, that means you're grossly overpaid and you're not even able to crack the lineup. And if that happens, you probably get bought out, or you get put on waivers if you can be, or something. If you're that bad, they're going to find a way to probably try and get you off the roster. So Cody Ceci, sorry, man, you get a D. But he's thrilled by having that contract. Like I said, Adrian Kempe, not thrilled that it's an A contract because it means he's a bargain for the Kings. Cody Ceci is very happy to get a D because that means the Kings are overpaying him, and he likes that. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen to watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on our next show, we'll have another Kings flashback episode. We're going to be joined by LA Kings analyst and one of the heroes of the Miracle on Manchester, Daryl Evans. He's going to talk about the greatest comeback in NHL playoff history and one of the biggest upsets in NHL playoff history, the Miracle on Manchester. We're going to focus on that great moment in Kings history coming up in our next show. Also later in the week, we hope to have former LA Kings assistant GM Mike Fuda. And of course, we will have our fan feedback show at the end of the week. If you want to send comments or questions for that, lockedoneddie@gmail.com is the address, EDDIE. If you're watching on YouTube, we welcome your feedback in the comments section. And we'd love you to stay connected with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.